Good morning.
Oh, if you're here.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
おはようございます。
Oh, you're
Mr.
here
Joe.
too.
Hello,
Alright, I should have
morning.
this meeting room
Good
open
morning.
just by default. Oops.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
It's fine.
Oh, like
Yeah.
a lot of you are here. Yeah, I'm the late one.
That's late is relative.
All right, let's throw the hosting.
Okay.
Jeff's a co-host. Nick is gonna be a co-host because he's gonna share his screen.
Okay.
Yes, I do believe so. Yeah.
And Owen Dennis is going to be a co-host.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
awesome.
Yeah.
So all co-hosts now have the ability to share their screens, etc.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
I guess we wait until 12,
Yeah.
8 minutes from now.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Good morning. Hello, Jeff.
Good morning. Hey, Nick. Yeah. How you doing?
Good.
Good morning. Yeah. How are you doing?
Good. Good. How are you?
I am so good. Sorry about the miscommunication, but I appreciate your time here now.
That's okay. That's okay. Is it okay if we have our video on, or how should we handle this?
Let's go video off. You can just keep your mics off, the three of us, and then anyone else that wants to jump in can either raise their hand post a message in chat, or wait towards the end when we can maybe reserve, maybe 15 minutes or so for questions and answers and conversation. I mean, we'll keep it quite light, so if someone has a pressing question, maybe we can incorporate that into the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good.
Yeah, I'd love for it to be a back and forth too. We don't need to preach to anybody.
Absolutely. Exactly. You understand.
Yes. Okay. Well, Owen and I will turn our video off then, so we can all be on the same playing field.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. Are you're able to post any images there, Nick?
Yeah. Do you want me? Oh, let's see. Could I post them? I'm kind of new to Zoom. Can I post them, or should I screen share, or what should I do?
Screen share.
Okay, let's see here.
Lovely.
Okay, you see some birds?
I see a whole lot of bird. Yeah.
You just let me know. Should we start now, or should we wait a couple minutes, or when should we?
Let's give them the 3 minutes. We'll start right at 12 o'clock.
That's fine.
We'll start right at 12.
I'll hold my birds up until.
Yeah, that's right. Raise your bird so you can occupy us in the meantime. I mean, there are going to be people that trickle in late. That's just the way it is.
Fine, yeah.
But just out of respect for your time, let's definitely start at 12.
That's okay.
You had mentioned Owen needs to leave at 1, our time, of course, which is completely fine. In fact, we can try to wrap up by 1 o'clock. That sounds good. Keeping it sweet and short. Yeah.
I'm gonna get a cup of coffee real quick.
I'll have one too, please. All right. Nick and Owen, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let me just quickly introduce, and then we'll take it off. We'll take off from there. Just so everyone, let's just go over some rules and regulations. If everyone can keep their mics off while we're talking, that would be appreciated. Feel free to message in the chat section. and we can try to incorporate any questions that you have into the conversation. I've requested that this remains less lecture-y and more chatty, so more of a conversation again, than more of a than a lecture style Zoom meeting. So, all right. But I'm gonna let Nick and Owen take over almost immediately. I will be jumping in if necessary, if at all. Yeah. So Nick and Owen, would you like to introduce yourselves? I mean, I could do it, but I think it would be more personable if you guys took
Sure.
that on. All right, thanks.
Yeah, I'm Nick Bachman. I am a storyboard artist right now for Sony Animation, working on one of their movies in development, doing some storyboards for that in Los Angeles, California. Owen, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm I'm Owen Dennis. I'm the creator of Infinity Train, and I worked on regular show as a board artist for 4 seasons. I worked a little bit on Close Enough, and so now I'm just doing Infinity Train.
That's Cartoon Network, right?
Cartoon Network, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Owen. I was thrilled that you're able to. I know time is tight, so but I know these guys will really benefit from hearing you guys talk and any advice that you have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me just give you both an overview of who is in the Zoom little meeting here. We have a combination of all years in the animation program at University of Technology here in Kingston, Jamaica. And we have faculty and probably staff as well. So it's a whole different grouping of people at various levels, from first year up to 4th year, and maybe even some graduates and faculty. So yeah, just to let you know who's in the group.
Great.
Cool.
Well, if Jeff, do you want us to start anywhere specific, or I was just going to go and start with my work and then kind of move into our topic? If that
sounds great. That sounds perfect.
Excellent. So what you're seeing right here is just some birds. You can all see the birds on the screen. It's just some of my personal artwork that I do just to keep busy. I always I try to draw as much as possible because, as you know, animation is a lot of drawing. So these are sort of some drawing from life. Not necessarily, these are just from photographs. I didn't see these in person, but so yeah, this is just kind of how I keep my drawing skills sharpened. And here's some more personal work. I play the banjo and fiddle. Jeff knows. So yeah, I always try to incorporate that type of stuff into my work. More weird stuff. Just some monsters. It's just some personal work.
Sure.
I love color. This is a dog that I really liked. So yeah, I love working in color, and like I said, I love keeping my drawing skills sharp. And I wanted to end on this quote, which is from Orson Welles, and we can kind of use this to springboard into what Owen and I wanted to talk about. And I had suggested even writing this down because this is a quote that I live by, and I think this is extremely important. This is: "The enemy of art is the absence of limitations." Which the enemy of art is the absence of limitations.
True.
Which meaning if you don't have any limitations, if you could do whatever you want, you have every color, every brush, everything at your disposal, you'll never be able to figure out what to do. There are too many options. And so embracing those limitations, I've found, has really helped drive my career and help drive my art and focus me. And just using any limitations I can find, whether that's well, we only have so much money for this project, or we only have so much time for this project, or we only have so many people to do this. Using those to shape, okay, well, maybe the project can only be this long because I can only do it in this much time, or maybe it can only be stick figures because I don't have enough money to make it. But you still are making something, and that's the number one thing. And so using those limitations to your advantage, I think, something to really, really live by. And so what Owen and I wanted to talk about today was really utilizing the tools that you have and making the most of the things that you have, because Owen and I'll speak for myself first, and I'll pass it to Owen a little bit. Owen and I are both from pretty small towns in the Midwestern United States. My town was like 3,000 people. I know Owen's was pretty small.
Yeah, I think it was 7,000, something like that.
Yeah, 7,000. So we had absolutely zero connections in Hollywood or
no culture out there in farmland.
Yeah, no culture, no nothing. We had zero connections, zero culture, and so we went into the business absolutely cold, and we were never handed anything, but we took all of the school that we went to was a 4-year art school, which was very expensive. They don't need to be that expensive. I don't think that the specific school that you go to really matters. It's all about what you make of it. Because I know a lot of people here, especially even in California, they say, well, you have to go to Cal Arts, is what they say, the California Institute of the Arts. But Owen and I didn't go there, and we're doing just fine. And so it's all about what you make of it. No matter where you go, no matter where you are, you have to make the best of the situation that you can. And again, embrace your limitations to make the best product, even a better product than you ever could if you had no limitations.
I think there's also a lot in the way of like supporting other people who are in a similar situation that you are, because if it's sort of the rising tide lifts all boats thing. It's like if you are like, I think this is what helped Nick and I, was that we're friends and we've been friends for what, decade plus now. And it's one of those things that's like, we had a group of friends and we were all friends with each other. And when one person would get a successful sort of job, you know, that person was able to recommend like, oh, you should also look at my friend here and this person. And so it's like you become sort of a group of like artists helping each other.
The network.
Yeah.
Networking is very important. And like Owen said, he and I both got into this business. We broke into this business because eventually one of our friends got into it, and then we help each other out. We pull each other in. Mm-hmm. And the good thing is that now all of you have friends in the business here in Owen and I, and we would be happy to help you. If anyone wants to reach out to us, if you're ever in the States or anything, we would be thrilled to help you. And that's, we would love to do anything. So building a network is a really, really important thing, because it's not just about talent. It's about being a good person. It's about being on time. It's about getting the work done. Oh, and you mentioned that thing about Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman wrote down something that I thought was really clever, which I'd always had in my...
He's a comic writer.
Yes, comic writer. He did that's all these. I can't think of it. The stop motion with the girl in the raincoat.
Coraline.
Yeah, he wrote Coraline and a couple episodes of like Doctor Who, and like, you know, he's a writer. Like American Gods, I think he did as well. He wrote something down that I always thought was just always in my head, but he actually wrote down and made it like it made sense, which is just he had a Venn diagram that was 3 overlapping circles. And he said that if you hit 2 of these circles, you will always be able to be hired, like no matter what. And the circles are easy to work with, on time, and good artist. So basically all you have to do is be either easy to work with and on time, or a good artist and on time, or a good artist and easy to work with. Like, but you're not on time all the time. Like all you need is to be like 2 of those, and you'll always have work and you'll always be able to find something.
That's absolutely true.
And it's very, very true. As someone who has been in charge of hiring people and keeping people on board or not having them stay on the show, it's very, very true. Mm-hmm. Although I would say that I weight things a little heavily more towards being easy to work with and not being an
That's
asshole.
true. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Being a nice person that is easy to work with is
some people just
number one.
Some people just like they treat others very disrespectfully, like because they're in charge of them, or because they have a different job than them, they view them as like a lower sort of person, but like that's not acceptable.
No. Yeah, so just always, Owen and I always like to have the most trouble-free cruise as possible.
Yes.
Everyone loves just take it easy. Yeah, you guys are from Jamaica, you know what that's about. just we just like.
Absolutely.
So one thing that I wanted to, I had a couple, early on, I got a couple pieces of good information from my uncle when I was in my small town when I was growing up, because my dad, my small town, everyone in my town was mostly farmers, right? We were just surrounded by farmland. And if you weren't a farmer, you know, you kind of were, you weren't looked down on, but it was kind of the city thing, right? Or the town thing. You grow up, you farm, you stay in town. And so my dad, who was also a farmer when he was growing up, he never thought, oh, you know, Nick can draw, but you can't make any money in art. And so I listened to that. And then so I went to a school that I didn't even follow art for a year. And that was a really eye-opening experience, because I realized that the art was really what I wanted. So then I followed it full time. And then by doing that, by following my passion and really going all in on it, I've become, I mean, I'm not trying not to brag, but I'm not trying, objectively, I'm pretty successul in art. And now my dad doesn't give me any guff about making money anymore. And it's great. So it's, a couple of, so I wanted to say a couple of pieces of advice that I got when I was in that sort of point in my life when I wasn't sure, like, could I even do this? Is my dad right? Could I even make a living in this? My uncle gave me some really good pieces of advice. And one of the things that he said was, if you're the best at what you do, let's just use this as an example. Let's say you're the best artist in your class, or let's just say that, let's use that as an example, the best artist in your school class. Then if you're the best artist there, then you're going to be the best artist anywhere. There's no specific concentration of amazing talent, not even Los Angeles or Hollywood. There's no specific concentration of amazing talent. It's the same everywhere. I know it seems like there is, and that's what I thought when I was talking to my uncle back then in this small town in Iowa. I thought, man, I can never make it out there. I'm only good here. I can never. That's not true. And even if you say, well, look, I'm going to put my work up next to this other person who lives somewhere else, well, clearly not as good. But even if you don't think that your art is as good, if you're the best at what you do, that means you have the best work ethic. And that goes so far. It goes way further than talent. That goes hand in hand with being a good person to work with, like Owen and I were talking about. And if you have that good work ethic, you will go very, very far.
Yeah.
And that one more piece of a fun thing my uncle told me was, he told me this little anecdote about crabs in a barrel. He said there was a bunch of, this was after, my dad told me, you're not going to be able to make it. So my uncle said, there's a bunch of crabs in a barrel. And there's a little bit of water in the bottom of the barrel, and these crabs were all piled at the bottom, getting ready to be eaten. They're about to all be eaten. And then, they're like, okay, that's it. We're just going to accept our fate. We're just going to get eaten. And then all of a sudden, one of the crabs starts to climb up the side of the barrel. His claws start to grab into the barrel. He's going to make it out. Well, the other crabs at the bottom, they see him. They say, well, wait a second. He's trying to make it out. He can't make it out. He's got to die down here with the rest of us. And so they pull him back down in, and they don't let him escape. Well, my uncle said, don't let those crabs in the barrel pull you back in. Like, no matter what you do, if you want to do your own thing, if you want to move away, if you want to do something new in the place that you're at, that's never been done, don't let anyone tell you that you can't. Crawl out of that barrel and don't let the crabs pull you back in. That's something that I've always thought of. And anytime I come up against any adversity, I always think about, well, don't let the crabs pull me back down in the barrel. Just keep going.
I wanted to jump on the thing you said about like parents or other older people that are like, you can't get into art. That's crazy. The thing that I always point to with that is like, you'll have an aunt or like a parent or an older friend that says, you can't get into art. No one makes any money on art. You can't do that. It's not going to work. But then I always think, like, based on what experience?
True.
Because I've never met someone who said that and is also has any experience in working in art.
That's a good point.
You know, like,
So
what,
true, so
what do they
true.
know? they don't know anything.
So true.
They're basing their opinions off of general knowledge that just seems to exist out there in the world, which was also made by people who don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
And so they're basing it on that. They're basing it on like watching a movie or something about the starving artist, the artist that wasn't able to make it and stuff like that. Well, that movie was made by a bunch of freaking artists. Like,
Right.
what are you talking about? Like, there's definitely a struggle. That's for real. Like, the struggle is a real thing.
And yeah,
However,
it's never an instant switch. You always, there's always, it's hard at first, but if you are consistent and you stick with it, it always pays off. Go ahead, Owen.
Yeah. So it's like, I always found it tough hearing that when it's like, it's not coming from people who've actually experienced that. But hold on, Shane. I guess one of the biggest things is support, especially in financial support, when someone who's not in art. Yeah. Yes. That is a difficult thing. Getting financial support. Like, I was very lucky in that my parents were able to help me, but I definitely know a lot of people whose parents weren't, and they were, I mean, they were able to do it. It took longer. That's one of the issues, is like, when you have a lack of money to help you in your art, it definitely takes longer. But I don't think it's not something that's like a eliminating factor. I don't think.
And I think also, jumping off that, I think I always tell people who want to bust into the business, I say, absolutely get a job waiting tables, or get a part-time job, anything to just get the bills paid, right? Mm-hmm. And then in your free time, just build your portfolio. And then in 1 year, you'll have this amazing portfolio. You'll still have money keeping yourself alive, and you'll be able to get a job. I guarantee it. Because anybody that puts together a solid portfolio can get work, especially right now. Animation is booming right now.
And something else to think about when it comes to that sort of thing is like, yeah, you're probably going to need a computer. I feel like that's a pretty, like, you're going to need a computer. However, there are so many programs now that are free.
Yes.
That weren't like that when we were in college and before. They just didn't exist. I learned Photoshop, not using Photoshop originally. I learned it using GIMP, which is an open source Photoshop-like program that I used back in like high school, and that's how I learned things. So there's GIMP, there's Blender, there's Unity, there's a lot of programs and stuff that are free, that you can still build up your skills in. Yeah. When you try to transfer them to another program, that if you like started working at a company or something, if you try to transfer it to them, you know, trying to Photoshop for the first time or something, it's really not that big a leap.
Right.
Also,
as far as as far as like learning those skills, the internet is mostly free. There's tons of fantastic information on the internet, and it's honestly, it's the stuff that we learned at the art school we went to. So like, you just have to seek it out. That's what Owen and I are trying to say. Like, when we went to an art school for animation, and what we learned in the school was useful, but the stuff that ended up being the most useful to us after we left, going out into the real world, was when we the stuff that we did on our own, the extra miles we went, you know, reading blog posts about here's blog posts about line of action. I'm just using animation specific things. Things about reading books about cinematography, you know, sketching, pausing movies and sketching the frames to see like how these shots are set up. Like that stuff that they mentioned in school, some of it, but they didn't make us do it. But we went the extra mile and did that stuff and did that studying, and that is what really because we took advantage of everything we had, we made the most of everything that we were given. That's what really I think helped us along. And a lot of that stuff was free. Like I said, a lot of those, I learned a lot of my animation foundations from blog posts from animators I admire. And that was stuff, I think, that was the stuff I got praised for when I got hired by an animation studio after college. They were like, wow, Nick, your lines are really clean. This is like comic book ink line. Where did you learn that? I want to say online. I just learned it online. So it's that type of stuff is available freely. You just have to look for it. And I can't give you any specific. I can search for some and find some good examples, but honestly, you can find them as well. Just Google on Instagram. Honestly, I've seen a ton of great art tips on Instagram.
Yeah,
which is,
I have a folder on my desktop that's just a bunch of people drawing. That's like, here's how I draw noses. Just a folder full of noses, like a folder full of eyes, like because like you know, whatever they figured it out. I'll just copy them.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's important to also. I mean, what you guys are saying is so good, and that I think it's also important to emphasize that no matter what art school, where you are, who your art lecturer is, nobody can teach you how to draw. That has to come from within. You know, we can help you organize your thoughts and show you techniques, but really, at the end of the day, it's your internal drive and passion that's going to get your drawing skills up.
And also, also something I think to point out is like, I know people that have worked with me that never went to school, or they went to school for like one semester and then immediately got a job. I hired somebody on my show that was, she had never worked in art, but she had worked in museum restorations. So her entire like background was taking books and like getting really close to them and like weaving the fibers back together. Like that was her job. And she became like a board artist on our show just because on the side she was also drawing this other stuff that she liked. And so we taught her a little bit while she was on the show because, you know, clearly I looked at her art that she was making on the side, and I thought that it had a lot of very good emotive qualities to it. I thought it was potential. Beautiful. Yeah, it was a lot of potential. And so I was like, yeah, great, I'll hire her because like I have a couple people on staff who are pretty experienced at this point. It's okay for me to hire some more people who are new and haven't really done this before. So yeah.
Could you guys talk a bit more about portfolio and developing a portfolio?
Sure.
Yes, I was just going to do that. I saw that.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, I wrote that.
Yes, I would say portfolio, absolutely, every time. This is the only one rule for portfolios that spans across all portfolios. The portfolio must be tailored to the job that you're trying to get. Mm-hmm. No matter what is in it, anything in it, it must be, if you're trying to get a background painting job, let's just say a background painting job, you wouldn't put a bunch of abstract paintings of flat white canvases in there with long artist statements. You would have a bunch of landscapes or a bunch of interior drawings. You want to, if you're trying to get a character animation job, you would have specifically for character animation, you would have life drawings because that's something that's very specific to animation. But you wouldn't have like, well, here's a metal sculpture I made. You might have that in there as well, but you really want it to be mostly focused towards, you want it to be animation. If I'm trying to be a 2D animator, it's going to be 2D animation in that portfolio. So I would say, yeah, the number one thing is your portfolio should be tailored to the thing you're trying to do. If you're trying to get a job in one thing, it should be for that thing. If you're trying to get into a school or a program, then it can be more broad, but it should be a clear example of, this is who I am, this is what I'm trying to say with my work, and this is the breadth of my work. If that's what you're doing if you're trying to get into like another art school program or anything like that. But if you're trying to get a job that's for a specific thing, it should absolutely just be tailored to that.
I just wanted to
go ahead.
jump on that a little bit, which is that, yes, it should be specifically designed, tailored to whatever the job is that you're looking for. But also I would say, like, make sure you're only showing things that you actually want to make. You know, like if you put in if you want to be a character designer and what you're doing is putting in your portfolio a bunch of pictures of coffee cups, people are going to be like, wow, this person's really good at drawing coffee cups. I should hire them to draw coffee cups.
Or horses. This person drew this one horse. Yeah. Now let's have him draw horses. Oh, yeah. I can't draw horses. I can't draw.
No, horses have too many knees. So it's very much like making sure that whatever it is that you're putting out there is what you want to do. Because the fact is, like, if you're building this portfolio on your own, it's going to be stuff that you kind of want to make anyway, right? Because like you're doing it in your own free time. So make sure it's stuff you want to make. And then you would potentially get hired to make the stuff that you want to make, which is a very satisfying job to have.
Let's say, here's one example of this, and then I wanted to segue. I think this will be a good segue. Let's say you wanted to get a storyboarding job. Well, storyboarding isn't necessarily something, it's not like a drawing that you can just do, right? It takes a little bit more thought than that. Well, honestly, coming from a perspective, I can speak for Owen on this too. If someone takes the time to write out their own thing and storyboard that, that's almost an instant hire, honest to God. That person is so driven that they must be just a fantastic worker. So, and that stuff goes a long way. If you don't have any storyboards and you say, well, what am I supposed to do? Write your own little story and storyboard that out. And then maybe you might even make that into a little animation, and that thing could go viral and you could be set forever. I mean, that's the great part. Sorry, that's a great part about the platforms that exist now, is that no matter where you are, you have a megaphone that goes with the internet. It's global. You can blast that out, your message out to anybody.
Yeah. I was gonna say there's also plenty of writing stuff online. If you are somebody that doesn't feel totally comfortable writing or telling your own specific story, but you're comfortable telling somebody else's story, which is a very common thing in storyboarding, which is, they have a script and they're like, please draw this. It's totally cool, I think, if you go online to some like small, there's plenty of like Reddit, like Reddit subreddits that are all about writing. And you can go onto the subreddit, you can go like, hey, does anybody have a story that I could storyboard just for free or whatever? It's like, I just want to do this. You can ask around on the internet and find scripts and find things that people have put out there that you can storyboard.
Sure.
You can also do things that are like classic tales. Like if you have like classic fables or anything from where you're from, like draw that. Like that stuff's fascinating. There's plenty of stories out there that you can use that don't necessarily have to be something that you wrote if you're not comfortable with that.
And on that, I wanted to say, that's the great, because that's what I wanted to segue into as well, working, using your limitations to your advantage and such. You don't have to live in America or Los Angeles to do this at all. And Owen and I were talking about this specifically with your guys' situation earlier today, and people hear from guys that look like Owen and me all the time. Yeah, honestly, Owen and I are sick of it.
Yeah.
People want to hear, the world wants to hear from other voices, and honestly, I know that there's a lot more going on in Jamaica than Bob Marley, and people want to hear that stuff. So you guys have a lot to say, and I think you should absolutely use that and use this world platform of YouTube and Facebook or Instagram, Twitter, all of that social media. Use that, hashtag it, get it out there. Like your voices right now are louder than they could have ever been, and people are thirsty for that stuff right now. Absolutely thirsty. So I would say, like, do it. Just do it.
Even just like, I also read I really enjoy reading small comics that people have written. So if you're not getting into like storyboarding exactly, I have definitely hired people based off of their comic work as well. So if you were thinking like, oh, here's a story about a thing that happened to me 2 days ago, and you just draw a comic about it, like go for it. You know,
Yeah.
that totally is a valid uh, piece of art. You know.
Yeah, and with comics too. I have a good friend of mine that is he went viral with his comics on Instagram and Tumblr. His name is Nathan Bulmer. He goes by Nate More Bikes, and uh, he has gone absolutely viral with his little comics that are basically stick figures that are just funny. He's funny. He has funny jokes, but he doesn't draw a whole lot. But he does these little, he does these little comics that just because he's funny and little stick figures, but he's just gone viral and he gets work after work. Like I've worked with them on many productions, and so you don't have to be a great artist to get into it. If you're better off, you think that maybe I'd like to tell jokes or do that. Well, there's a way you could do that as well. I mean, just use social media use the format to your advantage.
Yeah, think about the limitations of the format and what it can bring. So the fact that you can only have, I think it's what, like 8 images in an Instagram
Something like that.
story or something, an Instagram, whatever it's called. I'm so old now. Like look at what the limitations of each platform is and like work with it. So like whenever I made comics that were on Tumblr, I specifically made sure that all the comics were laid out in vertical format.
Right.
I thought about how will this look if I scroll down instead of scroll to the right, or something like that. It's all about figuring that out. I mean, Nick said that he knows comic people. I also know like comic people that got really, well known in animation and stuff based on their comics, like Ryan Pequin, who made a 3-word phrase. He's the person who invented the phrase because of reasons. Like Ryan Pequin, he worked on Regular Show with me, and then he came and worked on I then liked his work enough and I had him come onto Infinity Train, and like he continues to get work and he's pitching stuff around to different studios and stuff. It's because he drew a bunch of stupid comics that he thought were just kind of funny. Like that was it. And people appreciate that.
Yeah, one more thing I wanted to say. I'd love to take questions and I'd love to talk to everybody. One more thing I wanted to say before we jump into that. Owen, you mentioned, and I didn't really think about this. You mentioned like as far as like thinking there's because we were in a small town, so we were like, oh, there's nothing for me here, and we left. We didn't. Now looking back, like, well, we probably could have just stayed there and done it. But Owen, you mentioned like if people leave, you mentioned like a whole group of people, like-minded people leave. You want to just explain that?
Yeah, I mean, so when I talked about like a little earlier, we were talking about like, oh, my friend group, it was Nick and a few other people, and we talked about like, oh, one of us got a job and lifts up the other people because we point to like, oh, I can't do that job yet, but my friend can, like that kind of thing. That's how you create an industry. That's how you make an industry wherever it is that you are. The fact is, like, no industry started because there was a massive thousands of people in that industry already in a location. It was because somebody was like, I'm going to make this here, and I'm going to use my friends who have the same attitude as me. Like all of us want to make animation, for example. I want to make animation. My friend wants to make animation. I know like 6 other people that want to make animation. We should work together as a group to make animation. Yeah. And then you become the industry. That's like the industry. Animation in Los Angeles wasn't really a thing until Disney, I think, where he was like, oh, that's just where I'm going to put it because it's next to the film. Like that's why he decided to put animation in Los Angeles, is because it was nearby to the film stock and the cameras so that he would save on shipping costs. That's it. Like that's the only reason. And now it's like a huge industry because other people were like, oh, but that's where the animators are. And so, that's how you start industries, as a group of people get together and they say, I'm going to make this thing now.
If you find yourself in a group of friends saying, there's no industry here, we got to get out of here.
Yeah.
Make the industry. You
Yeah.
are the industry. It's
Yeah,
right
that's
there. So yeah, don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah, I hope students are really listening to that, because I mean they are all blessed here in Jamaica. The animation industry in quotations in Jamaica is still, waiting to be tapped into, and the students in this group here are the ones who are going to become the community and are the community. So they're already at they have huge asset in that regard.
Yeah.
I mean, Nick and I have straight up talked about, Nick and all of our friend group, I think, have straight up all talked about, like, why are we living in the most expensive
Right, with all this competition and
yeah,
talent
like
around us.
why are we here doing this where it's
That's
so
right.
hot
That's
and it's like it's sunny and nice. It's like, well, but it's
It's
we're
a
never
desert.
actually outside. Like, we're animators, we're inside all the time, so we could do it anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that actually the coronavirus also works to your advantage in a way, which makes me feel shitty saying it.
No,
but it
preach
is
it. I agree.
It is a thing
Yeah.
that, like, from now on, I'm 90% confident. From now on, I think the vast majority of animation is going to be a very dispersed field.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be like people all over the world will work on some, because that's already happening. Like, Imagine Entertainment, they're the ones that do Despicable Me and like all that sort of stuff. Despicable Me and Minions.
Yep.
I've had meetings with them before, and I went to their studio, and their studio was like, I want to say like 40 people to make that entire movie. And then I found out, well, it's because they don't have anybody on staff. They're actually all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they have people that live in Florida, they have people live in Spain, Africa, like all over the place, and they pay all of them the rate that you'd pay somebody if they lived out here. But like, that's how they function, and I very much see that is going to be the way of the future in animation. It's going to be like some sort of weird perk if you have an office in like a building somewhere.
I just had a thought that that I have to throw out. It kind of, and not really related to that specifically, but it's related to this whole thing. If everyone always talks about like, oh yeah, I was there on the ground floor of this thing, and now it's huge, right? Oh, I was there at the ground floor of Facebook, and now I'm rich, or whatever. Mm-hmm. You guys are at the ground floor of Jamaican animation. No one is really doing that. I've never heard of it. I'm a professional animator, and so you guys, all you have to do, you can do this today. You and your friends get together and you say, okay, let's start making some stories. Let's make some social media, the Jamaican Animation Collective, and start posting things that you make. The world will listen, because there is no voice coming from you guys right now. And it's not your fault. It's just like, the world is there ready to listen. You just all you got to do is speak up.
That's honestly one of the reasons I wanted to do this meeting, was because I wanted to find out who you guys are, because I'm interested. Yeah. I was like, there's an animation class in Jamaica, and that's cool. And I was like interested, and I wanted to hear what you guys have to say. So like that's why I'm here at the moment. And something else to think about when it comes to like industries and stuff is like, how did various industries get made? Like, people look at Japan, they go like, oh, they're this amazing animation industry, right? And I mean, there's also clearly a lot of problems with it, but everybody talks about like, oh, Japan has this animation industry and stuff. Well, Japan had an animation industry because they were the people that were just sort of doing some of the grunt work for animation in like the 60s and 70s. Mm-hmm. Like, that was what they did. And then now it's gone to Korea, and now Korea does a lot of that stuff. And what happened was, Japan got so good at it that they started making their own things. And they were like, we've learned animation, we're going to make our own stuff. And they started making their own stuff.
And now we buy that.
And now we buy that stuff. And then now Korea is doing the same thing. There's a bunch of interesting like animation stuff coming out of Korea that's really cool. And now Korea is outsourcing to China. And so it's like this constant like a small community that's able to do a little bit of work here and there, and then over time they become a much larger powerhouse.
Yes.
And I think that's very interesting.
Totally. I see one question there that I wanted to address, and that question comes up all the time, and I've asked it a billion times too. How do you find the inspiration to make something? It's hard. I tell you, I never, ever, ever have inspiration, ever almost. And when it comes, it's fantastic, right?
Yeah.
But it almost never happens. And so
like
to
right before
stimulate
you go to
that,
sleep.
honest to God, here's what I do. If I'm not feeling inspired to draw something, I just look around the room and I draw whatever looks interesting to me. Or maybe something doesn't look interesting to me, but draw something that's right in front of you. So it's something you don't have to think about. And as you're doing that, maybe, you're getting a little idea of something here, or you'll get inspired, you'll get inspired by things you never thought you would be. And that might even just be your brain just thinking as you're drawing on autopilot or whatever. So that's one way. And the bigger way, that's a way to address it in the immediate. If you sit down with a sketchbook and you're like, what do I do? Here's how to address it in the whole thing, lifelong, how to have inspiration, have life experiences. You have to go out and do things, because that's inspiration. If you just stay inside and like, oh, this is me too. I'm only learning this recently. I'm an inside person. I love to be inside. I'd always say no. Hey, you want to come out to this party tonight? Hey, you want to come out and dance? No. I still might not go out and dance. But, I always say no. But every time I would go out, something crazy would happen. And so that would be the inspiration that I need. Just going out of the house. So just have experiences, do things that aren't art. Those things will inspire you.
I feel like my common answer to this is exactly the same. I'm always like, please go do something other than animation.
Yeah.
Like the amount of I get so tired, like whenever I see a comic online of a person sitting in front of their Cintiq, and like that's how the comic starts or something. And it's like, I don't care. I don't care about the fact that you're sitting in front of a computer and you're figuring something out to draw. Like, tell me about life. Tell me about, like, that's what we're doing. Like, artists are a reflection of life. So tell me about life. Like, sitting in front of your computer is, it's part of life, but it's not something that I particularly feel like reading.
No.
You know? And also, I think what it does is it makes it that, like, if you go out and just have experiences, it gives you stories to tell. The fact that if you're just going straight from like school to job, like there's nothing there. Like I've had experience with people that are like in charge of, telling stories or something, and it's very obvious that like they didn't really have any life experiences outside of animation, and it's weird. It's like weird talking to them, because you're like, what do you think? Like, how do you experience anything in life? It's so weird.
Yeah.
And it's, unfortunately, it's relatively common. So
just experience things, do things.
Yeah.
I got a privately sent question here. How can we get into freelance animation from Jamaica? Owen, you got your first job while you were abroad. Now that it wasn't a total cold call.
No, it wasn't.
Because it had to do with us also having a friend that was part of it. But again, you have us now. We are your friends, so you're on the same level here. But Owen, talk about your situation.
What happened with me was I was living in China as an English teacher, and I decided, okay, well, I want to go back to the US and I want to start my animation career, but I didn't really know what to do or how to do that. And I had a friend, Toby, who was Nick and my roommate in college, who had gotten a job as a storyboard artist on Regular Show. The way that Toby got his job was J.G. Quintel, who was the creator of the show, tweeted out, hey, I'm looking for storyboard artists, send me your stuff. And
that happens a lot too.
It does, yeah. So Toby couldn't contact him through Twitter because he didn't have DMs open or something. But he went onto Facebook and found him there and was able to send him a message on Facebook that was like, hey, here's a couple of my comics. And then he sent him some of his comics, and one of them was about like, I think a dead mouse or something. And it was just some random comics that he'd made. And JG was like, these are great. And he sent him the storyboard test, which is a test that sort of like for regular show at least, it was a writing and drawing test. It's sort of like, what sort of jokes do you make? What are your drawings like? That sort of thing. He sent in the storyboarding test, and he liked it, and he hired Toby. So Toby then became my in, just because I happened to know Toby. I was like, Toby, I would like to take this test. And he talked to JG and was like, hey, I think you should take a test. And then I took the test, and JG liked it. And this is why we've specifically brought up, like, know your friends and help your friends. It's all about like the rising tide.
Yep.
And, you know, I was in China when I did it. I had no idea if what I was writing was funny or not, because I was just like alone in my apartment. So I was just like writing jokes on my bed, being like, I don't know, maybe Mordecai and Rigby think that this thing looks like a dick. I don't know. And like, that was it. And they loved it. And that wasn't a you should hire this guy because he's my friend. Like, I was hired because they liked the work that I did.
Mm-hmm.
But they had to see the work in the first place. And the reason that they saw the work in the first place was because they met somebody, they knew somebody, and that person was able to go like, hey, look at this work over here.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And that's how it works. That's how all of this works. Like, everything, I've often seen things online where people are like, oh, they got the job just because they're friends with them and stuff. But it's like, friendship does not a good job make, because if you're friends with somebody but they're bad at the job, it's gonna fail. Like, there are definitely people that I know that I'm like, oh, I love that person, but I wouldn't want to like have them hired onto the team or something, because it just wouldn't work, you know?
Right.
So like, that's a thing. It's not just people hiring their friends. And I would say most of the time it's not, because nobody has that many friends. There's so many people you have to hire. Nobody has that many friends.
That's true. That's true. And also, I'll like I said, you have friends in us now. I'll leave Jeff with my email address, and if anybody ever wants any of their stuff, I'm happy to give my thoughts and feedback. Might take a little bit because I'm pretty busy, but I always try and help out anybody that has questions, because people helped me out when I was in your situation in school, and I reached out to some people that worked in the industry, and they said, you know, just pay it forward, do it for everyone else. And so that's what I do. So if you have anything, if you ever come to the States or to Los Angeles, send me a message or send me an email, and we'll get lunch. I'll take you around. If I'm working in a studio, I'll take you around if I can. And I promise I will. Just put Jamaica in the header of the email, so I know who you are. But yeah, it would be, like I said, you now have friends in the industry, so
that's right.
Use that. And also, one more thing I wanted to say. So the question I got was, how can we get into freelance animation here from Jamaica? So I could see that either as you could. You getting into freelance animation in the States from Jamaica. So Owen touched on that. And or how do we, if there's any animation in Jamaica, how do we make money in Jamaica doing animation, right? That's a valid question. I think that, like we've said before, it starts slow. It's going to start, it's not good. There's not going to be money, right? First, you have to, like I said, if you did that, was the Jamaican Animation Collective or whatever, I'm using that as an example. You did that today. You started posting stuff on social media. It will gain traction because your voices have been fairly unheard till now, and people want to hear that. So you start doing that. Then all of a sudden, more people take notice. And then all of a sudden someone says, hey, we really like this thing you did. Can we pay you a little bit of money to do this little ad that we have? Okay, yeah, you do that. Well, then there's a portfolio piece, and look, maybe you didn't make a ton of money that first time, but you made a few bucks, and you got to that fed you for a week. Well, then you just keep doing it, and it just builds from there, and it snowballs and snowballs, and pretty soon you own your own studio. Pretty soon, this Jamaican Animation Collective is a real powerhouse that's putting out content and winning film festivals and all that. So.
I would say one thing you can do is, if you know there are local companies and stuff, around you that are like, they put out TV commercials or something.
Yes.
Go to them and pitch like, hey, we have an idea for a TV commercial for you. Like, you pay us and we'll make this commercial. It's going to require you to go way out of your comfort zone to like tell somebody like, I want to make this thing for you. Like, let's do this. But it is a thing. Also, when it comes to money, never tell them what you made on the previous thing that you made.
Right.
Only tell them what you want to be paid. Don't tell them what you actually made before, because then you'll always get lowballed.
And on that note as well, the earlier stuff that you do, it's like we said, it's going to be a slog. So it's not going to be, you might go in and say, hey, I'm just going to throw out a number. I want $500 to do this thing. And they say, well, we do really want this thing. We only got $125. You might say, okay, I'll do it for $150. Whatever. You might have to make more concessions. You definitely make more concessions earlier on because you're trying to build your portfolio and you're trying to do that stuff. But as you get a portfolio, don't let people take advantage of you and say, hey, do this thing for free because it'll build your portfolio. You don't need to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, at first, yes, you do need to build your portfolio. So they call that paying your dues or whatever, right? And there is a bit of that where you say, okay, I'll take a little hit on this to do it for free. It's like starting the social media. I mean, you're not getting paid for that, but you're putting your time into, you're investing, right?
Yeah.
So and always think about it. Does this investment feel like it's fair to me to do it for X amount of money or even free sometimes, which I've done stuff for free. Sometimes it's worth it for the exposure or for the network or sometimes it's a, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Like I'll make this thing for you. And then I get something from you. So, and be open to that too. You could barter for something like that as well. And in that, I also want to just point out in general, like, never measure success based on a dollar amount because that is not what success is at all. I mean, this is just a general life thing, but I see a lot of people that I don't know, they think that if you're only successful if you're rich, but God, no, not even close. So it's all about just feeling that fulfillment. So let's see, is there any more? Yeah, paid in exposure. Yeah, don't get taken advantage of. Don't get paid in exposure. But like I said, if it's real early,
if they have the ability to give you that much exposure, then they have the ability to pay you.
True. Yep. Yeah, and like I said, if they think that, hey, my exposure will get you something, well, then say, well, the exposure's not quite enough, but maybe we can work something out. Like maybe you scratch my back, I scratch yours. We'll find something else that you can give me because the exposure is not enough.
Yeah.
Let's see. Were there any more questions in there I didn't see? Jeff, is there anything you've seen?
Students, do you want to take your mic off if anyone has a question and ask it? I mean, more personable for the last few moments. I'm just thinking, students, you must have questions.
It's all one. I'm just as they muster up the courage. I'm just kidding.
That's right, exactly.
I see one about views on unpaid internships. Yeah, I think internships should be paid, even if it's not much. But honestly, Owen and I did unpaid internships when we were in school. It was like some weird thing where we did a thing for Nickelodeon through a class. Yeah. And so we actually paid money to do that internship.
Yeah. But also that was at a time when I think unpaid internships we were just starting to realize how much of a scam they were.
Yes.
like it was right at that time. And now it's like, no, you should pay. They're doing work.
Yeah, it's changed. Yeah. I would say an unpaid internship at a genuine place where you think, yes, this will get my foot in the door, it's worth considering. Like a real studio or like I would say a real actual studio. But then they should offer you money anyway. I don't know what I'm saying.
I really feel like you should be paid for it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like unpaid internships, all it does is makes it so that people who have the ability to not be paid and yet go do a job.
Yeah. You should be paid.
Yeah, all people should be paid.
Yeah. I walk it back. You should be paid.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Final questions, students, staff, faculty, what do you think?
Just that way, I have to jump out of here in like 2 minutes. But you guys can obviously keep talking.
Absolutely.
Somebody say something.
Well, we definitely really appreciate your time, Owen and Nick. Thank you so much. And of course, we'd love to go on for hours in this conversation, but that's obviously not an option. But Nick and I have spoken a little bit about maybe him coming back and doing another workshop, maybe more specifically. And Nick and I will talk about that, of course, based around his schedule. But it would be great to get some feedback for some of our students from yourself. So students, Nick and I will discuss that and figure out the best way possible. So it doesn't consume too much. But if students are interested in getting feedback on their work, contact me and I'll communicate with you on how we decide best to do that.
Yeah.
So sound good, Nick?
Yeah, that sounds good. I see one more question that is absolutely great.
What
do you do when you're disappointed with what you saw on a regular basis? That's me. That's Owen. That's all artists. That's Jeff. That's everybody in your class.
So true. That's life. That's
the fact is, like, all the drawings that you see online, where you're like, oh, that's so beautiful. You're not seeing like the giant pile of trash sitting next to them. Like, I have so many sketchbooks where you turn the page and there's a circle on it, and that was it. And I was like, I don't know. Yeah. And then I just moved to another page. Like, it doesn't. It's tough. It's your own. Yeah. It's your own head that's doing it to you.
And
so true.
One thing that I'll say, let me just jump up to these birds. You see the birds again? Are they still on there? So you can see, like, some of these, I really messed up. On the right side of that owl's head, there's a spot where a big blot of ink fell on there, and I had to cover it up, and I just kept going. That goldfinch, I had a big block of black that came out the side of it, and I just kept going and made it into the branch. That's another thing that I've been trying to do lately, is if I make a mistake, just keep rolling with it and just try and make it into a feature if you can. Like, that's my new life motto. It's just keep rolling with it and make the best out of what you have and use your limitations. Hey, like, it all comes back to that.
And then also what you can do for a while is you can just lie on the floor and cry.
Yeah. I always say that. I always suggest fetal position, rocking back and forth, Owen.
I usually lie on my back looking up at the ceiling, and that's where I cry.
I stick my butt in the air, so if lightning strikes, I won't.
So good. So good. All right.
I'm going to jump out.
Or anything.
Yeah. All right, Owen. Thank you so much, Owen, for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Talking to you guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. I'm still here, Jeff. Are you still here?
I'm still here.
Okay. I'm going to sign off here too, if that's cool.
Absolutely, Nick.
I'd love to do anything like this again. So let's
okay. No, we'll definitely communicate. And thank you for your time and organizing Owen to join us. That was epic.
Yeah, he's a good dude, right?
Yeah, that was epic. But I'd love to have you come back, Nick, and maybe we could do something really specific.
Of course, yeah, I'll do anything. You know what would be cool would be to get, if anyone has any questions or anything, maybe start it there. It's like, I would love to answer any questions that anyone has specifically, and then anything. Yeah, it's think about it.
Okay.
Cool, man.
So for students, having gone through this initial experience, write down any questions that you may have or may that pop up, and let me know, and we can start organizing something more specific. Thank you so much, Nick. Really appreciate your time.
If any of you are on Facebook, add me on Facebook.
Absolutely. Well, I'll find ways to connect you and the students.
Yeah, please do.
All right. Thanks, Nick. Take care.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks. I'm really pleased with the amount of people that showed up to this. That was great. Any final thoughts, guys? And if you want to take off your mic, you probably have a little bit more confidence.
Hi. Hello.
Me and Jesus.
Hello.
One at a time, please. One at a time.
I like to talk.
One at a time. So how did you find having the two of them at our disposal for questions? And Enlightening.
Informative.
It would be so good to organize a field trip
Oh
Yes,
yes.
it would.
Please.
to Hollywood.
Yeah.
You know, one of the first questions was visa. Of course, that's a contending, but we'll communicate as staff and faculty, and we'll figure something out. Where there's a will, there's a way, right? But I think it's important to note that the first few words that they said in terms of kind of keeping yourself humble, staying on time, and how you treat people, I think are crucial words because in any business, and again, being an artist is being an entrepreneur, being a business, it's how you treat people that's going to make people want to come back to you to
That's
pay
it.
for your services as a visual artist, you know? So you probably get tired of hearing being on time and staying humble and all those things. Networking. I mean, I know Nick through performing music. So that's another art form, you know? So networking is so crucial because one network has a branch to many other networks. And Nick that's introduced me to Owen, who obviously has a huge amount of networks. And so the more people you meet, the more opportunities that can come from it, you know? So keeping that timely manner in how you treat people and staying humble through that networking experience is what's going to grow yourself as an artist. Yes, drawing and practice, but also how you treat people, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
Well, at least we know we're on the right path.
Very much so. Very much
Sorry,
so.
Still, I make the field trip to Hollywood something. There, you know, you have links to the visa them.
Of course.
We'll
figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Okay, so we can definitely email you guys, right? That's
Yes.
all I'm asking.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I'm going to, I'm using my friend's laptop, but
Okay.
I'm going to probably be in your email within a couple of days about some.
Please.
So yeah.
Whoa.
Ooh, that was hot.
Ow.
All right, that was hot. All right, everybody. So we have our next workshop is in 2 weeks. Jose, who will be joining us, who is an editorial cartoonist. And I'm going to try to keep these workshops going. Nick has offered to introduce me to other animators in Hollywood. And so we've got a lot of opportunity. And I think opportunities will come out of this. Remember, every artist who you speak to in these workshops is a potential link in quotations for you, you know? So organize yourselves and keep those questions written down.
And those portfolios.
And portfolios.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. All right, guys.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good day. You're welcome. Have a good day.
Thank you,
You
Jeff.
too. Have a great day. Keep safe.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.
All right,
I like
single
these.
file, 6 feet apart, 6 feet apart. Come on, single file, everybody out.
No man, no kid.
No, you're too close. 6 feet apart. Okay. Keep going, yes.
There we go.
Oh, Chevy Briggs.
If you step outside, you'll find sandwiches outside, out the door.
At the yards.
1 cup of juice, everyone. Don't be greedy, leave some for everyone else. That was good.
It was very good.
If you try to do everything, then you will be limiting yourself. It's like, oh, I'm amazing. Nothing can stop in my way. And then you'll be trying to do everything and not be able to focus on anything. But then, yeah, it's kind of cool.
Hey, Jeff.
Oh, that's nice.
Is Jeff still here? No?
That's
I'll
very
talk to him
nice.
afterwards. All right, so I'm gonna stop the recording here.
That's nice.